November and December is a great time to visit the City of Portsmouth museums because of the annual Coleman's Winter Wonderland display. On today's show, we'll go behind the scenes to take a look at all the work that goes into setting that up. And we'll have a segment of Hands-on History. That's coming up right now on Museum Moments. Welcome to this November-December 2018 episode of Museum Moments. I'm your host, Rob Lauer. Our first segment today is Hands-on History. We're going to head down to the Naval Shipyard Museum and talk to Diane Cripps, who heads the City of Portsmouth Museum's History Division. And she's going to show us a very interesting artifact that they recently acquired. Diane, welcome back to Museum Moments.
Thanks, Rob.
So what do you have here?
This is actually the newest acquisition to our museum collection. And I thought maybe people would be interested to know how things actually do get into the museum collection, because as curators, we love objects, but we can't take everything. We have limited storage space, limited resources, and we're promising to preserve things in perpetuity, and that's a tough job. So we have to kind of filter out things that people want to donate. We try to do it very gently, but we do have some standards that we look at, a checklist that we go down when people want to donate something. So obviously we're looking for things that interpret the history of the City of Portsmouth, which covers a lot of territory, the shipyard, and so forth. So I got a call out of the blue from somebody who said, I have an object to donate, and so we start a conversation. And it turns out that it was this really amazing kind of folk art model of an early 20th century car ferry of the type that crossed the Elizabeth River. I think the model was probably made in about 1950. That's just sort of a guess, because the ferries were kind of fading from history at that point. And so maybe somebody made it as a commemorative kind of project. But the boat itself that's depicted is an early 20th century car ferry that there was a little fleet of them that crossed the Elizabeth River. And the more we looked at it, the more boxes it seemed to check about local history, Portsmouth history, history of crossing the Elizabeth River between Norfolk and Portsmouth. And it's a phenomenal thing. I'm sure it's unique. Somebody probably made it, just, only one of them.
Yeah.
And it's full of very interesting detail about an interesting time period in history, because obviously it was made to carry vehicles across the river, but it shows a mixture of horseless carriages and horse-drawn vehicles. It's got a little ice wagon on one side drawn by a horse or perhaps a mule on this side, and a couple of automobiles from that time period on this side. It's got some really neat little details in it. It's got sailors hanging out. It's got a little clear spot where you can look through the roof and see passengers sitting on benches. There's posters on the wall. There's even the staining on the deck where the car exhaust would have left a kind of a charcoal kind of stain. There's, lifeboats and lines, and it's even electrified. It lights up on the inside, and it had a button where you could push it and make the engine run and the paddle wheels go. So it's just a really, really interesting artifact.
Do you want to turn it on? So can we see the wheels
Absolutely.
go?
Sure thing. It's got a switch for the lights, which are hard to see, but the lights light up on the inside, and then it has a little button that you hold. And the engine still works, on the inside, the motor that runs it, you can see the paddle wheels turning, the walking beam engine going up and down.
Now, the person that called you about this, do they know who made it? Do they just happen to have it in their house?
It was a couple of people who were into antiques, and they actually purchased it years ago from a sale. So it didn't come from the original artist, or it didn't come with its own provenance or anything like that, but it's obviously something very local and something that was handmade and hand put together. And what happens when something like this comes into a museum collection that's really appropriate is it gets us thinking about how can we interpret it and how can we use it to tell stories, because museums tell stories with objects. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that we had other things in our collection that would help us tell more of a story about the ferry. So I'm hoping someday we can put it on display, but we have some homework to do in the meantime. And the thing it first reminded me of was a lot of the images we have of the ferry, High Street landing, boats over time, and things like that. We have things that show us what High Street landing, which is right outside of where we're standing today, used to look like. It used to look very different. There was a ferry terminal building where you drove straight down High Street and could get right on.
And it was a rather big, sprawling
it was
complex.
Large. Yep. We have a postcard of it that you see here. And it shows the archways that you could drive your cars through. We've got images of what it looked like from the riverside when boats would, where they came in and how your car would come right through there. And images of how busy it was on High Street back in the post-World War II period.
Yeah.
Sailors and people and cars and trucks and storefronts and just a lot of activity happening. And it was a transportation, hub. And people look around Portsmouth today and see how drastically things have changed, and I think transportation is one thing that influenced
the redoing
change.
of the remodeling sort of Old Town that started in the 80s. Really, we had that center, the center medium strip now with the trees and the park. But I'm a baby boomer, so I remember when it was like this. It was a sprawling, busy city back in the day.
And of course, at one point, you have the tunnels coming through, and that was an enormous change. And we actually have a couple of artifacts that help us interpret, what that change may have been like. And this is just a poster that may have been from the early 50s when the tunnel was on the horizon or it was being built. And it kind of reassures you that the ferries will run, obviously, and no curtailment of schedule nor discontinuance of service anticipated.
We've been serving you since 1636.
We're going to keep going, the ferries will run, and 1955, that was it for the ferry service.
Yeah.
It actually did stop. So it just shows you how big of a change it can be, car culture, a tunnel.
But looking at the times too is amazing too. I mean, it from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. They still had a ferry every 20
24
minutes.
hours a day. Yeah, that just shows you how important, the waterways were important in very early history, but once the car culture came in, transportation was everything in Hampton Roads. You just had to get around. And so, it was a 24-hour ferry service as often as 4.5 minutes. Every 4.5 minutes during rush periods. Can you imagine the amount of boat traffic?
I'm thinking of rush hour
the...
with the tunnels. I can't even imagine what it would be like to stay with a ferry.
Right. So the ferry has a long, long history on the Elizabeth River. In fact, we used to sell a poster that we have an example of here that just shows the ferry through time. As early on as just taking passengers on a rowboat, to all the different styles of ferries, and we get down here to 1918. This is the style of ferry that we're looking at here in this model. So this is World War I era or so, early 20th century. We have a couple of actual photographic images. We have a ghostly kind of damaged picture of this vessel itself, the Twin City. There actually was a ferry boat called the Twin City.
Wow.
A more detailed one of a ferry called New York, where you can see even the little expandable fence that went across the end of the boat where you drive your car on, and the beam engine and the wheel houses that were up on top. So it's great for showing the detail that you can see in the model. And then we even have an image that's labeled the last ferry run from 1955. So yes, there was a day when it was done. In addition to some of the photographs we have in our collection, we also have some ephemera that relate to the ferries. These are just paper tickets that, it says right on them, drop-in box. So I'm assuming you could buy maybe a book of tickets at a time if you commuted frequently. So we have the paper tickets at Portsmouth, Norfolk County Ferries, Portsmouth, Virginia. And we even have, this is a metal token, Norfolk County Ferries. So, this is just something that's in our collection and requires more research. So it's kind of that moment when the artifact kind of gives you the homework that you have to do in order to tell a story, tell the full story of it. So I'm hoping someday we can take some of these things and put together an exhibit that'll help visitors understand where they are right here, because it all happened right here at the end of High Street.
Now, the building we were in, which is the Naval Shipyard Museum, which is under being updated, and that was all connected with the ferries, wasn't it?
It was the maintenance building for the ferry. It's about the only thing left here in Portsmouth of the ferry system, and it got renovated in the early 1960s. The museum itself started out on the shipyard, and then it lasted for about 10 years there, and the shipyard decided it needed that space for administrative purposes, and that's when the city acquired the museum. And the Civic League in town, it's actually an interesting story in itself, actually raised the money to renovate this building from what it was, which was an industrial cube of a building with big factory-style windows in it, and I'm sure it was full of tools and oil and supplies
Right.
and whatever you needed to keep ferry boats running.
And that was built around 1911, do we think?
1918, I think, or 19. It's just hit the century mark, this
Right.
building. So it's
Wow.
an adaptive use, as all the Portsmouth museums are. you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing this. This is wonderful. And
Pleasure.
good luck with everything in the history division of the museums.
Thank you. We're staying busy.
I bet you are. Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome.
The Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center, which is housed here in the old 1845 Norfolk County Courthouse, it's on the corner of High Street and Court Street, has exhibits throughout the year. But when the holiday seasons are upon us, they present something very special, Coleman's Winter Wonderland collection. Now, this collection was animated figures that were used to decorate Coleman's nursery out in Churchland beginning in the mid-1960s. Each year, the exhibit grew. By the 1980s, it was basically a regional phenomenon. People would come from all over the state during the holiday seasons to look at Coleman's Winter Wonderland. When Coleman's nursery went out of business in the early 2000s, the city of Portsmouth acquired all the figures, and now each holiday season, between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve, they are put on display here at the Art and Cultural Center. We're going to visit Skip Novak, go behind the scenes to the storage room where these figures are kept, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the process of creating Winter Wonderland. I'm joined by Skip Novak, who works for the exhibits department in the Portsmouth Museums. Welcome, Skip.
Hey, Rob.
And it is your favorite time of year again. What time of year is that?
Winter Wonderland.
Winter Wonderland time. And it is nowhere near winter. In fact, it's barely fall at the time of this filming.
It's not even Halloween.
Not even Halloween yet. Although when you watch this, it will be November, December. And we are in a place where very few people are allowed.
That's
And
true. That's very, very true. Very true. We don't let many people up here, and when we do, it's under heavy supervision.
And this is where all of the figurines from Coleman's Winter Wonderland are stored. And a little bit about what's involved with setting this up at the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center. It is now the middle of October, and you guys are already starting to set up things.
Yeah, it's day one. We're doing backdrops on the first floor and sound. So basically we get all the backdrops out of storage, we hang them up, and we run the speakers and the sound system on the first floor so that when the visitors come in and everything's set up, they don't really understand, but the backdrops are all hanging, and they hear the Christmas music, and it's all hidden. They don't see it. That's the first thing to go up and the last thing to come down. So that is what we do on day one of Winter Wonderland setup.
And then it's putting, I guess the figures are some of the last things to go out.
Figures are
aren't they?
usually the last thing. Well, actually, the last thing is snow. The last thing that we do every year is snow. The figures are like the secondary, second to last thing that we do. So we do the backdrops and sound, then we do the stages and electrical, and then we start doing the figures and the trees, and then the snow, and then
So you're sort of like building your way out.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, and so that's how it works.
So how many, do you know the exact number or a rounded number of how many figures are totally in the whole collection? I know that
Lost count.
Lost count. Okay.
count.
But we do not really have the space to put everything up.
No,
That was
no.
at what Coleman's. I mean,
No, because they had the castle, which is where they stored everything. They had all the sets that they would set up inside the nursery in and of itself, and then in the off season they would store everything in the castle. And inside the castle they had all the permanent scenes, which are, some of them are represented here that we never get to set up. They had permanent scenes, and then the sets that were set up inside the nursery in and of itself, they would tear those down and move everything inside, and there would be no walk room inside there.
but they had space too. I mean, it was a huge sprawling
Yes.
nursery.
Yes.
So they had, stuff was everywhere.
Yes. And
And?
I brought you a treat.
Okay.
You ready for this treat?
Okay,
All right.
sure.
All right, close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Okay.
All right, hold your hand out. All right. All right. You're never going to guess what these are. All right. There you go. Something special.
Okay, keys.
Yes.
And lots of
Read the tape. Read the tape.
Santa's Music number 4, Santa's Music number 3, donation box,
Do you know what those
country store, snow palace. What?
are? Those are the original keys to Coleman's nursery.
Oh my gosh, all of them.
All of them. Look, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Okay, these are the keys that Junie Lancaster, John Coleman, Hezzy, all of them would use every year to unlock and set up all of Winter Wonderland. All right, out at Coleman's Nursery. Now, when the Portsmouth Museum Foundation got Coleman's Nursery and the Winter Wonderland collection, and all came here, we got the keys. Now, every year...
And you guard them.
Every
Does anyone know about these other than you and me and
very few people know. Very few people know
now?
about these. These stay in my office, and then on the first day of Winter Wonderland, I bring them down here. And when I set up Sleeping Santa, that's this big thing right here. These go in the Sleeping Santa display every year. Very few people ever see them, but they're in the Sleeping Santa display every year. So these stay in Sleeping Santa's room throughout Winter Wonderland display. Wow. So it's a tradition.
I wouldn't embarrass you because I know that you have a personal connection with Winter Wonderland.
A small
Your
one.
When you first met your wife,
yes,
your first date back in
1987.
1987 was to go where?
Coleman's Nursery.
Coleman's Nursery. And you had no idea what she was talking about. You just knew there was some weird thing that people in Hampton Roads did.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I had never
the
heard
irony that you are now one of the ones in charge of this whole collection.
I am part of a team.
I know you never saw that coming.
No,
in the 1980s.
I didn't, and I'm sure my face is beet red.
Now, speaking of beet red, a lot of kids who went to Winter Wonderland, they turned beet red screaming when they went into the circus area
the snow
because
palace. The giant castle.
There were cute clowns, but then there were really creepy clowns like this one here. Now, you have a name for this clown.
Yeah, we call him the John Wayne Gacy clown.
And he really does look like that.
But he's kind of scary, and he's scared young and old.
Generations of people were terrified of the clown. And then there was the other one that sort of looked like him that jumped out of a giant box.
There's two pop-up. Yeah, there's two pop-up clowns. They still work. We have them. You can't see behind the camera, but they're back there on the shelves.
For some long ago forgotten generation, clowns were charming, but in the 60s and 70s, all we thought was like, okay, they needed a knife in their hand or something.
Like
they were
the John
spooky.
Wayne Gacy clown, and a lot of that through the years that have horrified people. I don't really have a particular fear of clowns.
I just don't get them. I don't understand what they are.
I think they're kind of fun. I mean, you look at some of these they're
cute.
Childish and they're
now,
cute.
we had never put these out at the museum because of limited space.
We have extremely limited space. There's a high demand for a lot of things. We tried over the years different types of displays. We had the gazebos for a long time where we would swap out displays. We had the Christmas Around the Worlds there. We had the snow babies. And we had a lot of good feedback. We had negative feedback. We put some clowns out for a while and they were popular, but we had a lot of negative feedback. We had people that didn't really like them. We still get people asking for some of the clowns.
And so for those of you watching who have asked about the clowns, this is your chance to see some of the clowns that never get put out.
These are a few examples. Also, the clowns were part of a circus theme. It wasn't just the clowns. Everybody remembers the clowns. But we have a lot of it, like this little beautiful little monkey. He's a trapeze piece, and he flips around. There was also a unicycle piece, and there was a couple of those. And the trapeze pieces I really loved. A little gear motor, and there's a little armature, and it goes up and flips around. There was a couple of those. One was a clown. We had the monkeys. There were some that spun on balls. It was a rather large scene. I think it was about 25 pieces to that one scene. And the clowns,
and it was like walking into a circus.
Yeah, it was.
Area.
It was a huge
big circus tent that you walked into.
And it was really, really neat. And there was a bunch of stuffed animals, lions and tigers and bears and all sorts of elephants were in there. Really, really wonderful. But we don't have the room to do that, and everyone wants to see the Santa scenes. They want to see the Victorian pieces. They want to see the chalet. And since we have such limited area, and especially they want to see the Sleeping Santa. I mean, that's the first piece in the Winter Wonderland collection.
Yeah, it all began with that.
Yeah, it all began with that John and Junie at the World's Fair. So that has to be in it. Then you have to have the snow bears, the painter bears. You have to have the woodland scene. You have to have the elves. You have to have the bakery. You have to have the air elf. You have to have the Victoria figures. And since you have such limited area and with our square footage, you have to pick and choose what you do. So we do that.
Traditionally, we open the day after Thanksgiving, right? Friday?
Friday after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
We will be open. We've got, last year we got rid of the wood-burning fire pits. We've got new gas burning fire pits, which are
Great.
really nice. If the weather's cold, we'll get
Yeah.
those up and running for everybody. Got a lot of great events planned. It's going to be wonderful.
Great.
And we've built a whole new exhibit for upstairs, so or scene. Air Elf has been all redone, so that's going to be a really fascinating exhibit. I know the entire department, the staff of us have worked really hard on that.
And you guys, I mean, you guys are pretty artistic. I mean, I think people think of the exhibits and they see you guys running around hammering things and screwing things. They don't realize, I think, how creative you guys really are.
I give it up to my coworkers, Tim, Ryan, Jeremy, and Andre. They are just a wonderful crew of people. I mean, you know, Ryan is one of the best designers I've ever seen. She has a hugely artistic mind. Andre just as well. I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen him do is just out of this world. Jeremy, I mean, his thought process just amazes me, how he can look at a problem and just go at it from all different angles. Tim, our leader, just his fabrication skills and what he does just amazes me at every turn. They're a great bunch of people.
No,
so.
you're a great guy too. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for bringing John Wayne.
Oh yeah, they're
some
great.
of our
Their eyes still
friends out
open and closed.
hiding.
Look at that. She's winking at you.
And be sure to check out Winter Wonderland at the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center, opening the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, and going on through New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, yeah. And if you find the keys to Coleman's Nursery, you'll never be able to use them.
Thanks. Coleman's Winter Wonderland display opens the day after Thanksgiving and stays open through New Year's Eve. During that time, the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center will offer special events, art projects, music, visits from Santa Claus. Here's Stephen Grunlett to tell us what they have on the schedule between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. Well, Stephen, welcome to this episode of Museum Moments, and it is that time of year, your favorite time of year.
A thrill, yes.
A thrill, yes. Winter Wonderland time. Everyone who works at the museums is involved in this. And but are there any things coming up in November at the Art and Cultural Center before Winter Wonderland opens?
Well, no, there's going to be more happening after the opening, which will be the day after Thanksgiving. So Winter Wonderland always opens that day right after Thanksgiving. On weekends is the best time to come.
Yeah.
Because Santa will be making visits to our Winter Wonderland, and he's usually here Friday evenings, Saturday evenings. The hours are going to be just like they were Tuesday through Thursday from 9 to 5, and then Friday and Saturday we're open a little bit later till 8 o'clock. And Sunday we're open from 11 to 5. We'll be doing a lot of fun art activities, crafts that relate to the holidays, but we'll have special artists coming in to guide people with making these activities that we might not be able to do in-house. So these are people with special materials or techniques that they can help share and teach. We'll have origami ornament making, we'll have painting on glass ornaments. There's going to be a couple times where we'll have music, and every year there's the Old Town Holiday Music Festival. I believe it's the 8th of December this year, on Saturday, December 8th. Pretty much all day long, and every Saturday there's a holiday market around the courtyard we're sitting in.
New Year's Eve, are you still having the event that you've had in the past for kids?
Yeah, so at the end of Winter Wonderland, we always have on the 31st of December a New Year's Eve bash. And we'll count down to noon, and then we'll have a ball drop when we count down to noon. And after that, we have this carpet of bubble wrap with giant bubbles that we roll out in.
So the kids can make lots of noise.
Right behind this building. So the kids can walk and dance on this and make lots of noise. And we will also have a photo booth during this event, and lots of other activities like face painting and balloon makers. And there'll be other things going on before this like that, but more so during this New Year's Eve event.
Right. Well, good luck. It's a lot of fun. If you've never been to Winter Wonderland, check it out this year. It's been a Hampton Roads tradition since the days of Coleman's Nursery back in the 1960s. Thanks for joining us, Steve, and telling us all about it.
Thank you very much, Rob.
That's it for our show today. If you'd like to find out more information about Winter Wonderland or any of the events or exhibits at the City of Portsmouth Museums, simply log on to www.portsvaevents.com. I'm Rob Lauer. From me and from everyone here at Museum Moments, we wish you and yours a happy holiday season. See you in 2019.